Hey guys, my name is Logan and/or Frost and/or Grin. Call me whatever you like. Today we're going to be covering the story of Killer is Dead. Now I'm assuming you just beat the game, and if you didn't, then well, this is going to be rather weird, because you should do that. Before we get started, there's two key things to note that they do not explicitly tell you, which are huge key points within the story. First thing is the moon. Why is the moon important? Well, in this world, the dark side of the moon that we cannot see, produces this thing called dark matter and/or malice. Now, whenever there is a full moon, it trickles down malice upon the earth, making people corrupt. Now, it explicitly says all this. By the way, all my information gathered is from the theater mode, which is what essentially the keys to unlocking the story is. They're there. Anyways, back to the moon. So the moon trickles down malice. Now, the thing you need to know about malice is that malice can really affect human beings, specifically just by being in close proximity. Now, the second thing that you're going to need to know is the executioners in general. The executioners are, long story short, government agents that deal with the underground, aka matters of fantasy, I guess. Aka big old monsters. Like we already talked about, human beings are susceptible to malice, especially when they are killing people with huge quantities of malice. You see the problem. So many executioners eventually fall prey to malice or to dark energy or to whatever. Now, with that being said, essentially your bracket for malice is your will and/or your kind-hearted nature. So that's why some people, you'll see executioners immediately turn to the dark side or get absorbed or corrupted by malice, are typically people who are not that strong of willed, and hence why Mondo is kind of able to deal with it more or less really well, because in the lore, Mondo is actually a pretty good, kind-hearted person. Cool. So we explained the moon, aka the origin of malice, and we explained what the hell executioners and what makes executioners kind of dangerous to themselves. Alright, so the real story starts off with this man named David. David is an executioner, and he's very good at executing creatures. He executes many creatures, and finally he faces down this one called Tokyo, who happened to also kidnap a girl. Long story short, David kills said target, but as soon as he killed his target, he became overwhelmed with malice. Like I said, it's a building period. You get more and more malice over the course of you absorbing more and more. There are exceptions of people that are ridiculously resilient, like Brian, who we'll meet in a second. Anyways, so yes, David goes mad with malice, but he also finds this girl who's tied up. So David has the plan to go to the moon and to conquer it, because he knows that that's the centerfold of malice, the birthplace, if you will. Or at least just a hive mind, doesn't really go into detail about that. Anyways, he sees this girl, this kidnapped girl, as Mika. He tells Mika to spy on Earth. The reason why he asks her to spy on Earth is because he suspects that it will spawn the next executioner that could come after and kill him. Long story short, Earth, the planet that Mondo represents, so he could just be saying that spy on his brother to fuck. Anyways, the analogies in this thing are weird. Anyways, so continuing forth, David goes to the moon to conquer it. And he pushes out this character called Moon River, who is the owner of the moon. Okay, so David goes ahead and captures the moon. Now, when doing this, I think more or less you become the ruler of malice, or the king of malice. We kind of see David turn into something else. He's no longer wearing a nice buttoned up suit. He becomes this male model guy with ass cheeks hanging out. Anyways, long story short, after some time has passed, he visits his younger brother Mondo. Which it kind of alludes to the fact that Mondo is doing work for the government, and he's talking to his mother while she's making him soft-boiled eggs, which is his favorite. But she has this line that I never was able to put together, but it makes sense when you finally have the quote-unquote key, which is knowing that she had two sons, and David and Mondo are brothers. But anyway, she says this.
The yoke is a little hard. When you usually do it perfectly, is something the matter? Is there something on your mind? No, I think working for the government suits me. Don't taint my blood?
Now that makes a whole lot more sense when you find out that one of her previous sons already fell ill to the darkness, aka malice, aka dark matter. So that makes sense that she's warning Mondo to stop, to be careful of that because X, Y, and Z. Now, because this is a dream sequence, we don't know exactly what happened because things are foggy and they're being kind of distorted by this dream witch, I guess. Anyways, All we know is that David most likely kills Mondo's mom and then cuts off Mondo's arm. Mondo gets brought, again, this is where it gets finicky. Mondo has a unicorn. Not the most, it doesn't explain a lot. Anyways, Mondo has a unicorn. Moving on. It takes him to this place called Brian's office, the previous office that David used to go to, he used to work at. Brian sees Mondo laying there without an arm, and he sees an opportunity to help him deal with an ongoing threat, David. So then, Brian takes it upon himself to actually imbue Mondo with another arm, but the things he does not tell Mondo is that one, he gave him a very dangerous piece of technology with that arm. The arm is actually outlawed. You're not able to do that, especially with executioners, because we already talked about how malice can corrupt human beings. I mean, the reason why that arm is so bad is because it gives Mondo a huge edge, being able to absorb blood and hit that much harder and go that much faster and stay alive that much longer. But we already talked about the huge, massive risk of human beings and malice. It doesn't help that you're taking in and absorbing blood of high quantities with malice. So Mondo executes like give or take 3 or 4 people and is already on the boiling point to be a full-on like darkness king or malice king or being corrupted essentially. So that is why David, Mondo's brother, at the end of the game says this.
I'll run that idea by the boss and give you an answer once we've had some time to think it through.
Don't you understand yet? Your so-called boss has been taking advantage of you all along.
What are you talking about?
You throw the sun at a black hole and all that'll happen is the sun gets sucked into oblivion. Which is why I've prepared an even stronger black hole.
Yeah, both Brian and Vivian originally, when they seen Mondo in this state, said, hey, this person could help us deal with David. And they essentially didn't tell him that his arm is going to be this thing that's eventually going to corrupt him and turn him batshit crazy. Anyways, Mondo gets a sword that also absorbs blood, doesn't help his situation and the problems that come with that. Anyways, well, right around this time, it doesn't really specify when, but Mondo finds a collapsed girl in the street who is Micah. Micah, turns out she can make really good eggs, soft-boiled eggs. She's really good at making them. It's the only thing that Mondo eats. So Mondo's like, sure, you know, come and live with me on my yacht boat. That's, yeah, boom. That's how Micah comes into the story. Anyways, and she becomes his assistant when he eventually starts working for Brian's office. And the reason why Mondo does this, by the way, is because Mondo sees this as kind of just a job that was kind of thrust onto him when he got his arm. So he kind of just sees every execution thing as a job. It's not like, oh, I'm killing someone, it's just a job to him. So, good guy, but maybe some emotionally weird stuff there. Moving on. So yes, Mondo starts working for the Brian agency. He starts hunting down all of these people and executing them. So let's go into the detail of some of those, because there are some key points that you should kind of be aware of. First thing is your first run-in with Damon is pretty interesting, because Damon, he originally took the spot of David. And now you're taking the spot of him. The interesting thing that I think plays a part in either the sequel of the game or the ending of the game is that Damon specifically tells Mondo that you will eventually fall for the darkness, so you need to have a beacon of light that always allows you to find your way back. On a side note, guess what planet Mika represents? The sun. Literally not a bigger beacon. Anyways, moving on. So yes, Mondo starts going through the paces and he starts killing these huge darkness or dark matter influenced enemies. Now the reason why this is bad, for not only Mondo, specifically Mondo, but not only Mondo, for all executioners, is because when you kill something with huge amounts of dark matter in them, you get massively infected. And the fact that Mondo is absorbing the blood of dark matter enemies means it's happening that much quicker. And his arm is specifically doing that. Now the reason why his arm is doing that is because Brian is an old ass legendary executioner who runs a very high tech, high budget organization. And he was able to get materials from the moon and essence from the moon or whatever to make Mondo's arm, which again The moon is the birthplace of malice, so not as smart. Brian and the one girl are kind of assholes. If you look back on it, pretty much just using Mondo. Anyways, David was kind of just trying to look out for you. Moving on. Now, after we kill Damon, the next person we fight is this person named Elisa or Alice. Now she visited the moon, and that's kind of a running theme that you'll notice is because David is now the ruler of the moon, and David randomly keeps infecting people that Mondo has to explicitly deal with. Now this leads me into a theory that I think is pretty strong, which is David planned all of this. He knew that Mondo was the only one that could kill him, so instead of letting him have like a surefire shot right to him, he instead wanted to push Mondo to the breaking point, and then the last thing that kicked him over the edge was David's blood specifically, which allowed David to control him. And that's just some jumping ahead, just jumping ahead a little bit. So right around the time we get the mission for Alice, we also meet this person named Moon River. Now we already mentioned her, she's the ruler of the moon and wants her moon back. Cool. Now there are some dream sequences that suggest that Moon River and Mondo knew each other, although I don't think that's actually legit. Yeah, I think that is legitimately the what's-her-name distorting your memory. But yeah, I don't know, guys. That there are some parts where it, like, I don't know, it never really says what's going on. You kind of just have to be like, and moving on, and moving on to the next thing. Anyway, so Alice tells us about this person named David who she met on the moon, and that's what turned her into this atrocity. Now, we already know that because the moon is the hive mind for darkness, yada, 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 moving on. So then we start our journey of going person to person, execution to execution, building up a huge amount of, you guessed it, dark matter in Mondo. Hence why every time we kill a boss, it starts to destroy us. Now, the other thing to note is that Mondo absorbs the blood specifically, but the dark matter gets shot back into the moon, essentially overfilling the moon with dark matter. All right, so let's fast forward to the end now. We kind of went over the main plot points and the reason why the ending is happening in general. But as of the bosses itself, I think I mentioned it, but it very much seems like David is systematically putting shit in front of Mondo, not only to make him stronger, but also to edge him closer and closer to being completely corrupt. Hey guys, one quick thing that I forgot to mention in this video that I was just thinking of when looking through the gameplay of it, but it gives more weight to David influencing and basically having a plan for Mondo, so that he's not just like being a crazy person giving dark matter to this person, he's specifically putting it in front of Mondo's face. Is one of the things that we're going to talk about later in the video is that each character represents a planet. We already talked about Mika representing the sun, and we talked about Moon River, of course, representing the moon, but that is now David, and the reason why that's kind of funny is because David represents Mars. So when David is on the moon, it's a red moon, which is the exact correlation between Mars affecting the moon. But the reason why I think this gives more weight to literally David just like plucking strings is that every single time we execute someone, the world goes blood red. And if we look at the moon becomes red. It's almost like as the moment we're about to strike down this creature and infect ourselves with so much dark matter, the moon goes red, which is exactly what happens when Mars is affecting the moon, which is David affecting Earth in a way and Mondo in a way. Kind of playing into Mondo's game. Also, at the end, when you're talking with David, he says this.
How's work been treating you?
Busy. No thanks to you.
Which very much seems like he's kind of subtly saying that, hey, you've been doing exactly what I've wanted. Anyways, just some more food for thought about David being a little more clever than you think and really basically planning all this, and it's falling all into place. Anyways, moving on. Now, when we get to the, I think, 11th and 12th episode, we end up dealing with that dream witch. Now, at this moment, Mondo finally gets all of his memories back, him realizing that David is his brother, and realizing that Mika, she also got her memories back, and we get to see that David actually saved her that day. And by the way, David brainwashed her to spy on Mondo, so she has no memory of it, and etc. The game is really weird about using certain words. So, for instance, I guess now is as good a time as any. Characters in this game are represented by planets. So Mondo is the representation of Earth, the moon is the representation of a Moon River, and Mika is the representation of the sun. And guess what David is the representation of? Mars. And that will make sense why the ending of the game is a thing. Anyways, so we've already established that Mondo's arm absorbs blood, which therefore has dark matter in it, which makes it bad. Anyway, so it's funny, in the last section of the game, David is trying to tell Mondo, don't kill me, it's a bad idea, you're not realizing what's happening, but Mondo is too headstrong to even listen, and yeah. So that's why in the final aspect of the game, David's laughing and etc. because Mondo is already at the breaking point to becoming corrupt. And the straw that broke the camel's back is his brother's blood, which not only is, are they the same blood type, I think that's what the game's hinting at, is that they're the same blood type, so not only did you absorb the same blood type as you, but that blood type has a stupid amount of dark matter in it, and so happens to be the wielder of the moon, so I think just by inheritance, that kind of gets transferred. Now, with that being said, the ending of the game is a red moon, which if you look in the theater mode, which is where I'm getting all this information by the way, it shows that that is something where the moon, which is now Mondo, is being affected by Mars. And that's it's kind of blatant proof that Mondo is a kind of a mixture, or maybe not a mixture, maybe he's just an evil version of Mondo, and that's where the game ends. And that's why everything leading up to that point happened. Is because, again, Mondo's arm is this thing that absorbs dark matter, and Mondo starts to realize that his arm is the thing that's kind of causing this, and he starts to realize that he's pulling in his own brother's blood, and he's starting to become evil, so he lops off his arm. Now, this is where the story gets kind of weird, because in this shot where Mondo is realizing he's pulling in all this dark matter, there is tons of dark matter being thrown at the Earth. Now, this is where I think there's some, like, cause for questioning, because the next scene we see is Mondo, well, there's no more dark matter being thrown into the Earth, and Mondo is essentially commanding dark matter. So it almost feels like Mondo isn't like being like, oh, I'm gonna cause all this chaos to the Earth. It almost seems like he's just content being the ruler of the moon and like piecing everything back together. I don't know, that to me is an interesting scene. On a side note, I did hear a kind of theory, it doesn't really make sense knowing that his arm is the thing that absorbs blood, but taking that out of the equation, essentially the theory is that Mondo is still kind of good, or Mondo did a good thing, which was, with all the dark matter being thrown at the Earth, Mondo lopped off his arm to stop the dark matter from entering him, but I imagine he realized that was a failed effort, and instead decides to, okay, well, all this dark matter is going to the Earth, I'm going to absorb all of it, and that's why the next scene we see Mondo pull in a stupid amount of dark matter, and he's basically controlling it, not only alluding to the fact that now he is the ruler of Malice or the king of the moon, and whatnot, and yeah. Now some things I just want to talk about because they interested me, and it's very clear that this game was supposed to have a sequel, but sadly it did not sell well, and I say sadly because I really enjoyed the game. Anyways, so one of the things I wanted to talk about was that clip that Damon, the previous executioner that took David's spot for Brian's office. He told Mondo to find a light that can never be snuffed out. And I don't think any of your like weird romance minigame people are that, because none of them, like, and I don't think Moon River is that either, because Moon River at the end of the game essentially puts a hit out on Mondo. By the way, I never mentioned that. Yeah, so we killed David, we absorb David's blood, we become the king of Malice, Moon River puts a hit out on Mondo. So with that being said, I don't think Moon River is like the light at the end of Mondo's tunnel, you know what I mean? Okay, but like I kind of said with Mika, not only does she represent the sun, which she doesn't need to represent that, by the way, it's kind of odd to just give her that. Oh, by the way, the Earth, each planet does have like a thing with them. So for instance, Mondo, aka Earth, or the planet Earth, represents a kind of balance between people that are good, but people that are also not susceptible to evil. So yeah, Mondo represents that balance and knowing that people are both good and bad. Mika represents the opposite. Mika represents fucking gung-ho happiness to the max and like crazy energy and etc. And then, you know, Mars and etc. They go on about that. Moon River is more like a gloomy, content kind of personality. It kind of, yeah. So to me, it kind of makes sense that in the sequel of the game, either it's going to go two ways. We're going to either kill Mondo, because he's the new baddie, or One that I think would be cooler, because I don't really want to play another character. I want to play Mondo. He's kind of like, he's a decent enough character that I want to see more of. Anyways, so yeah, I think in the sequel, if there ever was one, Mika was supposed to be that thing that pulled him back. And in the very ending of the game, when Mondo essentially is gone, Moonriver doesn't have a problem. It seems like none of his love interests have a problem either. The only person that actually is sad is Mika, which makes complete sense when Mika and Mondo were both kind of codependent on each other. Mondo kept Mika safe and kept a roof over their heads and whatnot, and Mika kind of gave him emotional support and whatnot, and, you know, helped him in every other way. Making them damn soft-boiled eggs. But yeah, and to me that's kind of a beautiful story if it ever got to that point, is again, you know, Mondo being this ruler of malice, you know, having Mika coming to get him in the next part, or a higher but like a lot less of a happy ending would be Mika being the only thing that could kill him. But if that was the case, then I don't really understand what the heck Damon, or what the reason for Damon's voice line was, which was, again, find a light that can help you never succumb to the darkness, which I do think is Mika. Which maybe that's, I mean, it doesn't explicitly show Mondo being an evil. Like, at the very ending of the game, yes, it shows him being influenced with the moon. It shows Mondo being influenced by David, because the red moon, and David represents Mars, and that's the effect between the moon and Mars. Anyway, so yes, he was affected by David in the sense that David kind of put him in his place of being the king of malice. But it doesn't necessarily say that Mondo's an evil bastard that's like slaughtering people. All it shows is Mondo stopping the floods of dark matter that were getting thrown onto the earth, and him repairing a house. And it doesn't show anything inherently negative or like evil. So maybe he is okay. Maybe he is okay because of Mika. And I don't really know. I say Mika because I don't really know what else. What else he could be so jazzed about. You know, what else could keep him that light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know. So potentially, I don't know, guys. If there ever was a sequel, it'll be so interesting to see where it goes. It could either go Mondo's the bad guy, and Mika, I think, is gonna have something to do with it, and maybe she's the thing that allows you to kill him. Or maybe Mika goes and finds Mondo, and Mondo has to kill maybe the root of dark matter with her, and you know that. I kind of prefer that. I don't really want to just become another executioner and go forward. Now, with that being said, in the sequel, if there ever is one, which there probably won't be, I would really hope that our guy doesn't have a stupid arm that literally is like diving in fire for executioners. Idiot. Idiot. Brian and Vanessa, you're cocks, okay? You're pieces of shit. Because they've basically doomed Mondo without even telling him that, hey, by the way, you're dying. You're gonna go become a monster. Who that army gave you? Yeah. Just, it absorbs blood. We didn't really tell you, though. And by the way, that is such a huge thing. Mondo doesn't know what wires are. I'm pretty sure that Mondo doesn't know that dark matter is in wires, and dark matter to humans corrupts them and makes them a bad guy, and etc. Mondo has like no information about this. He's kind of just like, you want me to kill a guy? Good. Let's do it. Anywho, guys, more or less that's the story of Let It Die. Not Let It Die. I'm so sorry if I said that 1,000 times in the video. Made by a similar company. Not similar, it's the same company. But guys, I enjoyed this game thoroughly. It was a load of fun, and I can't. I thought it was great. I thought the story was interesting too. I know some people got annoyed by the story, but I also didn't think it was that bad it took me like 20 minutes just of reading the theater mode to come up with all the information I have here, where it talks about the characters representing planets, and the fact that, dark matter has this effect on things, and the reason why Mondo is suffering is because of his arm, and Mondo lops off his arm at the end in the pursuit to try to not become fully corrupted, to no avail, it seems. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily show that he's an evil bastard either, because he's not doing anything entirely vindictive. Maybe if we give it a little bit more time, we'll see him start to do exactly what David did, but who knows? Who knows? And that'd also be a pretty cool thing too in the next game, if you were playing Mondo, but you kind of went back and forth between like David trying to take control because you have some of his blood in you, and going back to normal. That'd be really kind of neat. Anyways. Yeah, guys, that's it. That's the end of the video. Hopefully, I helped explain some things. I'll be honest, towards the end there, I kind of just lost it. I kind of just kept rambling about theories I have, and oh my god, why did Damon say that at the beginning if it didn't have any importance? Ah. Oh. Yeah, guys, that brings us to the end of the video, though. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe button above me, 2 videos to my right. I appreciate you guys for your time, and goodbye.